All right, so we are looking at 7.3 capacity. So capacity is just going to be another way of saying volume for some of you. Maybe this is an easier way to understand it, but has to do with liquid or pourable substances. Okay, so if we're talking about milk, gallons, quarts, that kind of thing, that's capacity. Okay, so 5 megaunits of capacity in the United States. So we are used to using fluid ounces. Which is also a weight, which is dry goods, can also be measured in ounces. So just know fluid ounces and ounces, there's a slight difference there. So there is a prefix of fluid when it's not dry ounces. Okay. Other units that we use is going to be cups, pints, quarts, and gallons. So you'll see on this chart, very similar to what we saw on the previous conversions, that whatever we're going to convert to stays on top. So we're going to keep, and whatever's on the bottom will eventually go away. And so for all of these, we're going to have the same thing going on. We're going to keep and have the bottom ones go away. If you want to make a note of those, you can make a note of those, that's fine, but just understand that all of these are the same conversion in both columns. It just happens to be that what are we converting to? It's the top label. And what are we converting from? It's going to be the bottom label. Okay. All right. Something to note, if you are familiar with cups, quarts, and gallons, that 2 pints does equal 1 quart. 4 cups equals 1 quart as well. So we have 2 different measurements for quarts. And then we start off with the 2 cups to a 1 pint. So there's a lot of different things going on here with cups and pints. And then cups and quarts. And then we go pints to quarts. So there's a lot of different measurements here. And then we also have one that says 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. Which is actually not very accurate, because technically it's like 3.87 quarts to 1 gallon, but we round it up to 4. That's just to make it easier for everybody else. Okay, and so 16 cups will give us 1 gallon, because that makes sense. If I got 4 cups equals 1 quart, right? So if I times that by 4, then that's 16. And since 4 quarts equals 1 gallon, that's where they're getting that from. Okay. So there's a lot of different measurements that can be kind of interchanged when we deal with capacity. I think on the next page, got some freebies in there. Some more conversion stuff that we had up here. If you're starting with cups and they want you to convert to gallons, pretend you don't see that. Again, just the same thing we did before. Cups has to go on the bottom if we're starting with cups on top. So cups to gallons, and since we have 73 times 1 on top and 16 on the bottom, you're going to divide 73 and 16 to get the number of gallons. Okay, and so that's just the way that this conversion works with capacity, just like we did with the other conversions. Okay, GAL for gallons. Don't use G, because G means something different. Okay. And if I want to go from fluid ounces to quarts, remember there's a couple different conversions that I can use. But in this case, I think it's easier to, for quarts to fluid ounces. I want to make sure that I'm going from unit to unit. So in this case, put quarts on the bottom. And since we have cups here and quarts, that's the one I'm using. So quarts here, cups, 4 has to be on top, 1 on the bottom, so we're going to multiply here to get 48. Okay. And then since I don't want to stop at cups, I want to go continue it and go to ounces, then that's the next one we have here. Every 1 cup equals 8 fluid ounces. So I want to put cups on the bottom and fluid ounces on top. And again, there's that combined conversion where you're canceling out one label and you're left with the other label, but then we want to cancel that one out to be left with the fluid ounces. Okay, and all the numbers on the top get multiplied. So 4 times 12 times 8, and on the bottom we have 1 and 1. So you can either write the 1 on the bottom or you can leave it off. Okay, but we know that this is going to be in fluid ounces when everything's said and done. Okay. Pretty easy? Yeah? Okay. All right, I think that's all she wrote on this page that I have. And then at the bottom you have, I believe it's this conversion. Is that the one that you have? Yeah? Okay. So the rectangle field is 36 yards in length and 48 feet in width. Determine the area of the field in square feet. So this is one where square feet has to be kind of calculated out. And then one thing you have to understand is that when we're dealing with yards and feet, we have a measurement for that. Okay. I also want you to point out that if you're looking at this measurement here, we have yards and we have feet. And so I can do a quick calculation with algebra here. And just to show you, if I were to raise this to a power 2 and raise that side to a power 2, what you get when you do 1 times 1? 1, right? Well, how about 3 times 3, guys? You get 9. So that means that if I were to square these units, what ends up happening is that instead of 1 yard equals 3 feet, I get 1 yard squared equals 9 feet squared. You guys see how that worked? Okay, so any one of these units that are in squared units for area, you can take the lengths and square both sides and get their square units as well. So here's another conversion I can use with squared feet and squared yards. Okay, so if I already have yards, right, and I want to convert to feet, so this is going to be the 36 yards I have here. I'm going to convert that to feet first. Yep.
Our papers are different.
Okay, what part was different?
It says convert to 48 yards on a paper.
Okay.
48 yards.
Convert 48 yards to just 36 yards.
Oh, okay, so instead of 36, yours says 48?
Yeah.
Okay, we can fix that. That's easy. I thought we had already fixed that, but apparently I must have goofed here. All right, so then I won't uncover those. We'll just do these together then. Okay, so if I got 48 yards instead of 36, is the feet also the same?
Now, like up there, the rectangle is still 36.
You
It's
can
just
just
step one
you
different.
can just cross out the 48 into the 36, please. I'm thinking I already did the problem.
Okay, cross out this 48?
No, the 48 yards. Just change, like in step 1.
Okay, what I had originally.
Yeah, what you had. We
Okay.
can just cross out.
Okay, yeah, let's just do that. Cross out yours and put 36. That'd be easier, since this is already kind of done here. All right, so forget 48 and just change that to 36. All right, so the yards, I'm going to be sure that these are canceled, right? So I'm going to multiply this out. I'm going to get 3 times 36, which is 108 feet. Okay, since we already have the 48 feet, right? This is a field here, so I want to do feet squared. Just double check and make sure we're doing the right multiplication here. Area for a rectangle has to be length times width. So in this case, instead of 36 yards, I change that to 108 feet. And so just make sure that you understand that that's where the 108 came from, and that we're multiplying 108 times the 48. Since we have feet times feet, we're going to get feet squared. Okay. So if you made the change, just make that 36, I guess. So that way we're good. Okay. All right. And that's all we're saying here, is that this is a rectangular field with 48 on one side, 108 on the other side. And if you multiply, you're going to get 5181, right? 84 feet squared. Okay. Alternatively, I'm just going to go ahead and do one other conversion here. What if I want these in yards squared? That's kind of why I did the little conversion up there. Since I already have feet squared here, if I want to change 5184 feet squared into yards squared, then I would use this conversion. Okay? So I would go ahead and put feet squared at the bottom, yards squared on top, and then just understand that we're now using 1 and 9 instead of 1 and 3 because these are the squared units. So this would be 1 to 9. And so if I want to figure out how many square yards that is, we would just divide 5184 by 9. So I would get 576 yards squared. So just another layer to when we do these conversions. If you're talking area, area can be unit squared. So if you're dealing with links that are already squared, then you can change the conversions that you have that are regular units and square both sides and get the squared conversions. Okay? So that's all this is, just taking the regular yards and feet and changing them to squared conversion. We good? All right. And then last but not least, I think this is the example 4 where they ask you to take the box that has 3 feet, 5 feet, 12 feet. So we're doing volume with these. And just know that we want all of this to be calculated in cubic feet. So if they're not all in feet, this is the only one that's not, right? Or cubic inches, excuse me. Cubic inches. Then change these two into inches. And since we already have the 12 inches here, now we know that we have 36 times 60 times the 12, so length times width times depth, if you will. Multiply all three together to get your conversion units. Okay? And then one more time, since this is cubic, we could also cube both of those numbers. So if you're doing 12 to the third power, that's 1728 inches cubed. Oh, look at that, I already had it marked in there for you. Okay, so if I want to convert inches cubed to feet cubed, that's going to be real easy to do. I just have to go ahead and multiply this one using those units. And then the final answer here should be 15 feet cubed. Isn't that kind of cool? So you can use your straight inches and feet, and then once you have cube units, you can also use the cube conversion to change it to the other cubed conversion. How we do? Okay. Let's wrap this up. I think this is kind of the last one. The chili pot question. I don't like this question only because it's kind of silly. If you got 24 cups of chili and you have a 5-quart and a 2-gallon, I'm going to choose the biggest pot. I don't know about you. But the way they wanted you to do this is to make sure that you were at least converting each of these answers and coming up with the correct amount. So yeah, so I'm not even going to do this one just because the answer is D. It should be the 2-gallon pot only. Okay. All right. So that should be it, and hopefully you guys have enough information to do your assignment, and then I'll put these up here just in case you missed the conversion for the squares and the cubes, so that you have those. Okay. All right, guys. Good luck, and make sure you're doing 7.3.